Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us as we go over the first in our series of webinars on the importance of a layered approach to cybersecurity. This is one of those topics that we really see as a wide net and are hoping to make it more digestible for everyone watching. Cybersecurity is at the forefront of tech now more than ever, and there are so many entry points. We feel it is really important for many people as possible to understand how to help reduce the chances of compromise and, of course, the possibility of loss of data and revenue. Quick introduction here. I'm Mike Leonis, COO of Fairdinkum. Myself and John Yakino will be here with you today to discuss how to protect yourself and your organization.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. I'm John Yakino, Chief Managing Engineer at Fairdinkum Consulting. Glad to see those of you that joined us today, and hopefully you will join us for the rest of this series as we continue these webinars and this series centered around cybersecurity. A lot of what this boils down to is knowledge of potential threats to then make informed decisions on how to best protect yourself and your organization. The wide net of cybersecurity doesn't just have one point of entry. We're looking to cover companies through multiple entry points that include, but are not limited to, logins, email, and phone systems. Even within those seemingly specific services, there's a host of different platforms and connections where systems can be compromised. Login security isn't just about a singular password, but now also consists of multi-factor authentication. Length and complexity increases, password management services, and single sign-on options, amongst others.
Okay, so our goal here in our first webinar in the series is to kind of give some high-level information and touch on this multi-pronged approach. And in future meetings, we'll dive deeper into each area to go over the specifics on what you and your team can do to make sure the organization is protected. We're open to questions, so feel free to ask anything you may want to discuss or get more information on. We'll loop back to those questions during a Q&A session.
Exactly. So let's jump right into this. One of the best ways we found to discuss vulnerabilities is to give a scenario from our experiences and research. Today, we'll talk about a character, Bob, who manages an accounting office and how his specific interactions can lead to a wide variety of compromises. Given some specific examples instead of generalities, hopefully can highlight how anyone could be affected by threats that currently exist. For this case, though, Bob has limited cyber protection in place and attacks are happening at many levels.
All right, let's explore where Bob may start his day in the office, culling through all his emails from the previous night. Picture him sitting at his desk, going through all the requests that came in and approving requests so the rest of the team can kind of get these handled for the day. You can imagine Bob's inbox. Standard spam filter acting more like a screen instead of a walled gate that checks for legitimate emails. Some cutting emails camouflaged with urgency and authenticity, aiming to deceive Bob into clicking a malicious link and providing sensitive information. Now, everyone knows generic spam. That's one thing. And I think we're all familiar with the bad spelling or sales pitch to, buy now, click below. We've all seen these emails. However, there are more threats out there that you might not be aware of. Some examples are malicious attachments. Seemingly innocent PDF or Word files for requests coming through have the potential to run macros that contain links to malicious locations. And there's email spoofing. It's real easy to make an email look like it's sent from somebody else. Malicious actors will spoof emails and request sensitive information or updates to accounting numbers and other types of sensitive information like that. Link scanning and validation. This brings you to a site very similar to the one you're often used to, but is actually hosted by the attackers themselves. Some ways to protect against these may include an email banner for externally sent emails, SPF DMARC checks, spoofing policies and trusted senders, and self-awareness of the display name versus the actual sending address. And here's where the spam filter, or rather the ineffective one, plays its nefarious role. It waves through these disguised threats, only targeting the bad English or the sales for pills or things like that, unknowingly allowing these messages into Bob's inbox and just ready to wreak havoc.
Now, let's imagine Bob did fall for one of these email attachments, or even just want to download some new software that seemed legitimate, at face value. A file runs on his system, and since he's the manager, he requested to be administrator. So he can run files without any additional IT problems. This is where we're looking at multiple options for endpoint protection. The three big ways to actually cover a device or endpoint would be, first, endpoint detection and response, also known as EDR. So what's EDR? EDR is a tool installed on devices which monitors for any suspected malicious behavior, such as connections to malicious websites or software, which is unknown or performing suspicious activity. Then there's a Security Operations Center, which is also known as a SOC. It's a service provided whereby security engineers monitor alerts received by different automated sources, and then they assess those alerts and the severity of what has been found in order to take action or identify security incidents. And lastly, you have managed detection and response, also known as MDR. What MDR does is it utilizes the SOC in order to respond accordingly to those EDR threats that we mentioned earlier. These come together to monitor and protect Bob's devices, identifying threats and swiftly neutralizing any suspicious activities before they can infiltrate his system and the network. The fact that installs aren't locked down to approved IT personnel, that in itself is a big issue. So now we're on to remediation and protection of those applications by utilizing backend systems to find odd behavior or requests not necessarily visible on Bob's screen, but they're happening in the background of his computer or the network itself. Web requests and check-ins to known botnet locations, that's a very popular one. And malware can be installed on systems for days or even months before the attack is realized. And that could be sending data, keystrokes, just general network information to malicious actors outside of the organization.
Okay, another protection tool that I want to bring up that you might want to consider is content filtering. This web gateway doesn't just prevent Bob and the rest of his company from visiting social media or gambling content while at work, but also assists in blocking known malicious sites and potentially harmful places on the web. Content filters, I know, do get a bad rap sometimes for being perceived as a big brother type monitoring system, when in reality, it's most often used just to stop employees from accidentally accessing potential threats on the internet. With content filtering, you also gain the ability to deny access to specific locations throughout the world for your employees. These locations are known to be the operating centers for malicious threat actors, and usually not locations your employees would need to access data from. So if needed, specific locations can be allowed in certain circumstances. If you know all your business happens in the US, you can remove a lot of potentially harmful locations by geo-filtering other countries, especially ones who have less digital awareness or authorities to take down attackers within their jurisdiction.
So hopefully this is painting a bit of a better of a picture on what we mean when we say there are multiple points of entry and areas of protection that companies can have. Specifying what protection is important to find out, to find the holes in your security and how it can be improved. Education on all this is important, not just for the IT employees, but really any employee. User training and open communication is something that can stop a lot of problems before they become massive issues. From those beginning examples of Bob going through his emails, if he was familiar with phishing training, how to spot malicious senders or spoofed or faked senders, and in general, what are some common tactics used by attackers, he could have reported and deleted the message and moved on. User education resources going over password complexity as well is extremely helpful. Each year, we are finding updates and lengths of passwords, now passphrases. The speed of which passwords can be decrypted today, it just astounds people. Education on what makes a strong passphrase coupled with multi-factor authentication brings to light that this is something which should be standard now, or not just an optional add-on. And sure, there are even ways this could be compromised. And we will definitely dive deeper into this topic during the password and MFA webinar. But overall, setting an education precedent with employees helps them make confident choices, or at least ask legitimate questions about their own security and accounts.
Okay, and this leads us to one of the last topics we wanted to mention today for security. That is testing your systems with vulnerability scans and penetration tests. We can go through a list of certain measures you should put in place to lock down devices. You can educate users and ask them to comply with our standards, but the real way to find potential cracks in your walled-off network is simply to just test it. Vulnerability scans and penetration tests put real-life known attacks and compromises to work against your infrastructure. A company with well-trained individuals will actually simulate an attack on your network and try to exploit any device they can. This obviously isn't with malicious intent, but should be treated as though the results were a real team of hackers trying to get in and move around your network. At the end of the test, the company will disclose where A, your protections were lacking, and B, where their efforts were blocked by security protections currently in place. They'll mention specifics on remediation and how you can prevent certain exploits they use to gain access to your systems. All this is done as part of the test, and no data is actually stolen or deleted. It's a good way to confirm your organization's systems are protected. Remediation can help you secure the vulnerabilities discovered, show the great importance of keeping systems up to date on latest releases of firmware, Also confirm with your cyber insurance that you've gone through the process to make sure the network and users are less of a liability. If it was confirmed that Bob's password wasn't easy to guess and couldn't be cracked in under a day, or that he even denied the MFA attempt and notified the IT team that he was compromised, this is all good proof that the protections you put into place are working.
Here, we'll go ahead and we'll kind of open it up to the Q&A section. I did have a handful of them ahead of time that we were emailed in. So I guess we'll kind of start with that. Pretty good general question here. So Mike and Gianni, what are some good minimum security items or security systems that you would suggest that every company has?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start this one. So for minimum security systems, obviously, you have your traditional protections in place. That would be antivirus, spam filtering, and obviously a robust password policy. One of the new standards we're seeing, though, over the last few years is MFA, or multi-form factor authentication. That's kind of been a default now for a long time that it be implemented. And also that has undergone some changes where we've fine-tuned it a bit, where first it was acceptable to have, a text message notification or just the pop-up. But now we've been stricter in that, where there's the notifications on your device, as well as entering a confirming PIN as well with that MFA. As you know, systems get tested every day, and they try to find new ways to get past them. So even though MFA is a standard, it's still ever evolving.
Definitely. All right. So the next question here that we have is, so how often would we suggest a penetration test be ran on the entire network?
Okay, yeah, I could take that. Yeah, this is something you'll definitely want to do at least annually. A lot of like cybersecurity questionnaires and such, we'll definitely be looking for at least an annual test. You could do it more than annually. At Fairdinkum, we do it every 6 months, just because we like to kind of just go above and beyond. We obviously hold a lot of keys to a lot of kingdoms at Fairdinkum between all of our clients. But just given how frequent and how ever evolving cybersecurity is, you want to test as frequent as possible, but definitely do it at least on an annual basis.
And that's sort of one of those things too, right? Where if there's a lot of network changes or new equipment stuff too, it's kind of good to get like a new penetration test at that point, because you essentially have like new potential points of entry for
Exactly.
people to kind of get into.
The main reason that it doesn't happen is for you because they can be on the pricey side, but I mean it's basically another insurance policy, and nobody really wants to pay for insurance until they need it. So
yeah. And then with this one, oh, sorry, Johnny.
I was just gonna say, as Mike mentioned, they are a bit pricey for a full penetration test. So you can kind of substitute that a bit with vulnerability testing. It's not a direct replacement, but if you want to try to save on cost a little bit, have your annual pen test, and then perform continuous vulnerability testing throughout the year as well, and that'll gain some protection.
Yeah, and I am aware of some other cybersecurity firms that do offer some discounts too. If you commit for multi-year testing, like over a 3-year period, a test each year, they will offer discounts for that.
To number 3 here. Our email service doesn't have a spam filter, and it's pretty bad. Are there more services to assist with this, or do we just ask our provider to increase their scanning?
So yeah, there are other services that you can subscribe to augment spam filtering. One that we use is Mimecast, which has some advanced features compared to, let's say, the default Office 365 spam filtering. With Mimecast, so you can adjust aggressiveness of the filtering, or specifically filter out, for example, I can't remember the exact name off the top of my head. I think it's gray mail. That's it. Where it's basically subscriptions that you might have subscribed to. It's a department
Newsletters and such.
Newsletter, yeah. Exactly. So you can get more aggressive on that filtering. A lot of times, our clients
mention their spam issues, and we're not sure what we need to dig in a little deeper, whether it's legitimate spam where someone is trying to phish employees, or it's just daily spam that you're getting from newsletters or legitimate sources that you may or may not have thought that you subscribe to. So augmenting your default spam filter, such as the one that comes with 365 with something like Mimecast or Proofpoint, really helps to get the granular levels down, and really fine tune that filter.
And it's definitely one of those things too. It's increasing even more and more, getting that generic spam with the AI generated text that kind of seems it's even better spelling, and it kind of seems like a person could write it, but it's still a little bit weird. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, having those third parties definitely is like it's a second wall as well that you kind of just put up for emails.
For sure. And we just a side note from our side, from I guess from the tech side of things, spam filters are great. But on the Fairdinkum side, we do test a lot because we've gone through quite a few filters till we find the right one. And occasionally you find the right one, and after a while it kind of loses its luster and it's not performing as well as it should. So we try to be diligent on our side to test the latest filters that are out there to see if there's anything better than what we're currently advising. But so far, Mimecast has been pretty top of the list.
It always seems like they over time they almost get like complacent in their filtering, and then it just a whole bunch more stuff gets through, or somebody gets breached or phished, and yeah, it's just time to move on.
So a question also as well in the Q&A here, so let's get to that. So Richard asked, do you recommend any certain password manager, and are they good to have? Are there any vulnerabilities that we can think with password managers?
Yeah, so our preferred password manager is Bitwarden. It's a very good password manager, very secure, allows for cloud authentication and encryption within the vault itself. But others are good as well. 1Password is another top provider. As far as vulnerabilities, obviously we've seen with LastPass over the last couple I'd say months or a year or two. They were breached several times. Master passwords were taken. They were encrypted, so it is complicated for those malicious actors to actually retrieve that data, but it's still vulnerable. You are keeping your secure data with a third-party provider who is susceptible to attacks, and obviously if they're holding a ton of passwords, they're really a target on the malicious actor side, because there's going to be good information for them to gather there. There are some password keepers that are local as well. I know Keeper is a local device that you can keep. It tends to be a little bit more secure, but you lose that convenience from it. Overall, we found Bitwarden to be very secure and also very user friendly. So that would be our recommendation.
Any one of these is going to be more secure than the old school, post-it note on the desk too. You definitely don't want to be doing that, or just like an Excel or a text file on your desktop. So yeah, if that's kind of where you were leaning with that, yeah, get away from that. But the password vault is the better way to go with this.
And obviously a really secure master password for that vault is advised. That'll help because a lot of times when these sites are hit, the passwords that are pulled from there are encrypted, and the more secure your actual password is, the more difficult it'll be for them to decrypt that stolen password hash.
Yeah, and especially like having it as like an online option too, for password managers, that gives you the chance to share passwords securely with either other teammates in the same company, or let's say you just want to create a temporary password for someone externally to just access a login of yours for a little bit of time, or maybe just that coworker for the day. Be like, oh hey, check on this for me, and then after that, it kind of doesn't give them the updated credentials. So I think it is a good option because otherwise, the classic pet names and birthdays, and we see quite a bit of those still being used. All right, so let's go up to another question asked beforehand here. So where do certain security standards come from for policies and procedures for a company, and how are these best updated? So I guess where do we get like security standards and how to like best update these for a company?
Sure. So there are many organizations and regulatory agencies and such that provide all sorts of security framework. The big one that out there that is most widely used and that also that Fairdinkum uses is NIST. So it's something you want to just kind of have your IT team just keep their ear to the wall on any updates they have because obviously as security is changing, so are kind of the security standards that go along with them. Yeah, it's something you definitely want to discuss with your MSP or your internal IT team. Just kind of get an understanding of all the various frameworks. But if you're not aware of which one to go with, like I said, NIST is definitely a good place to start, and you could probably just use that long term.
Yeah, and also for any kind of financial firms, obviously the regulatory agencies that they're under provides guidance as well. So a lot of times they'll be very similar to this, but they might have their specialized requirements. And so at Fairdinkum, we keep track of that variety of information that's out there. And I think,
Yeah, I think I was going to say
sorry.
this one is one of those ones where it's kind of just always ever evolving too, right? Because we even have those, Johnny, you'd mentioned in the beginning about MFA, multi-factor authentication. That just used to be a standard that was great and fine by itself. But it turns out that's vulnerable to certain attacks like SIM card swapping, people being able to like grab texts from others or just kind of social engineer to get those certain pins that go to people's phones. So even like getting up to date with those standards or those like attacks helps. And yeah, education for everyone essentially.
Yeah, and standards in general are, need to be tweaked as well. For example, this, as Mike mentioned, is one of the bigger standards that are followed or frameworks. And Fairdinkum, after reviewing, NIST standards, their password policies are on the lower side. I believe, just off the top of my head, I think it's 8 characters with complexity. And then, from our real world experience, we see that's really not enough. We advise on, I believe it's 12 characters currently, just to increase that security. So those really should be used as just a framework, and then each specific organization should tune those to their direct needs or what they're dealing with as far as personal information that they're keeping, or if they're a retail store and they have financial information from their customers. Those standards kind of need to be tweaked to enhance it for their individual situations.
Definitely. It's basically right answering or asking the question about like, hey, what can I do? And then hopefully getting some educated answers back to kind of help you with that too. We got another post here in the Q&A. So if a system gets attacked and email is knocked out, what is the best way to contact Fairdinkum in an emergency?
Sure. So yeah, for our specific clients, the main number is always good for a critical issue. And then that goes right to our dispatcher, who then can sort it out to the first available engineer or escalate it to an account manager or senior level engineer, again, depending on the issue that happens. In this case, if email was knocked out, that's a pretty big issue. So I would definitely recommend a call into the main line.
Yeah, you don't want to email there. We've definitely gotten that in the past. It's like my email's down. I've been emailing you telling you that it's down. And,
right.
Well,
can't really get it. Yeah. Those usually come in after it's been resolved already.
Right.
And then obviously from Fairdinkum side, as far as security is concerned, if email was down and someone tried to email in from their Gmail account, that goes to our ticketing system as well. But since we can't confirm the sender, that kind of delays things until we can verify it. So calling in is always great. We do have 24/7 support. So even after hours, our main line switches over to our after hours call center and to our on-call engineer. So always keep that main line handy.
Okay, so we mentioned network device updates firmware. How often should this be planned?
For network device updates, we normally do it on a a quarterly basis, just to make sure that any new updates, can sometimes have faults in them that cause issues. So we like to make sure they're thoroughly tested. We track it through our test environment, as well as we do a slow rollout to most clients and then make sure there's no issues, as well as, browsing forums, just to make sure there's no one else out there having some kind of issue with any kind of firmware or software update in general. If there is a critical patch though released, so let's say there's a known vulnerability that's released, that has any kind of devastating issue to it, where a user can gain access, or sorry, a malicious actor can gain access to a system, those critical updates are done immediately. Obviously, we do a quick first run test just to make sure it's not going to cause issues. But within less than 24 hours, we try to get that out to those vulnerable clients.
All right, and then this one is the last question that we had ahead of time. So this one is, what are going to be the general deep dive topics in the next series of webinars that we plan?
Yeah, just kind of as John mentioned earlier, with this first webinar was kind of just more of a broad, kind of the broad strokes for all security topics. So our subsequent webinars will kind of dive deeper into more details on each of these. So we will probably, the next couple will kind of be around multi-factor authentication, MFA, security training, and testing, as well as EDR, MDR, XDR, and then kind of application protection and endpoint control. That's kind of what we have planned on the horizon, but obviously there's a lot out there, and there's probably some future webinars for stuff that hasn't even been released yet. So it's just kind of an ever evolving beast. And yeah, it's something you definitely want to stay on top of, because a breach can be uber damaging and nobody wants to go through that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the slight inconveniences you might get from some of the security implementations are far less than an actual threat that occurs. And also, we are posting on our website, on our blogs, with new information. Some cover these topics as well in some detail. So always a good resource to check out for more information.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I just want to say, before we do close things out, thanks for everyone for joining in and kind of watching through our presentation here. Hope to see you back for the future webinars as we kind of dive deep and give a little bit more, I think, like exact helpful information as to what to look for and what we can help you plan, or you can even like look into plan yourself, for your company and network in general too.
All right, so I think we're answered all the questions that everyone had. Again, want to thank everyone for joining, and we hope to see you at future webinars we put on, and of course, follow along with us on our website for more information. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.